Hey guys, so the Nokia 8.3 is finally in the house and I can't wait to show you what this thing can do, as well as do the full review. But for now, this is the unboxing video, and in my opinion, this device is all about the camera. So the camera is going to either make or break this product once I get to fully test that out. But for now, enjoy the unboxing and let's get straight into it. So this is the box of the Nokia 8.3. As you can see, it's the new Nokia box, which they first introduced with the 5.3. And this is the second phone to come out with this box. On the back, you have all the specifications, such as the PureView Zeiss Optics cameras with the 64 megapixel main camera. It's a pretty standard, nice looking box, very simple. So let's open it. Of course, you get the phone, but we'll get to the phone a bit later. Let's see what else is in the box. You have very standard looking headphones. They look like the iPhone's headphones and they feel quite cheap. Micro USB cable, pretty standard. And the wall brick. So this phone can charge with 18 watts of fast charging, if you can call that fast. SIM eject tool. We even get a clear case. Here is the clear case that comes with the phone. Has the Nokia logo on the side, as you can see. Very minimal, does the job. So let's take a look at the phone itself, and the first thing I can tell you is this thing feels huge. My first impression of the hardware is it feels very, very solid in the hand. I really like this color. It looks really nice. But it is bigger than I expected. So let's compare the size of this to some of the phones that we're used to. So here is the Nokia 5.3. So the 5.3 has a 6.5 inch display, the 8.3 has a 6.81 inch display. Let's take a look at some of the other classics that we have. So this is one of the largest phones I've had before, the Lumia 1520. And just look at how big that 8.3 is. And here is the Lumia 950 XL, to give you an idea. So this thing has a 5.7 inch OLED display. Let's set it up and we'll get back to you. So I've managed to quickly set it up so we can have a look at the interface and the hardware itself. So my first impression of the display, which is, by the way, 6.81 inches and it's an LCD panel, is that it's actually really nice for an LCD display. It's no OLED, but it's one of the best LCDs that you can find. The resolution is full HD+, and it gets quite bright even in a studio with light directly pointed at it. As you can see, it's fairly bright. The responsiveness is good. I mean, it doesn't have a high refresh rate, which was one of the things we would hoped to see on this sort of device, but unfortunately it doesn't have it. But for what it is, it's a really good display. Nothing extraordinary, but does the job perfectly well. So let's talk about the hardware just for a bit. So the back is made out of this glossy finish, which feels like glass to me. And it has this very cool gradient color, which Nokia calls Polar Night. So it has a very typical Nokia design with the circular camera bump on the back. And when it comes to cameras, there are 4 of them here. So you have a main 64 megapixel camera with an aperture of f1.9. You have a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, which is dedicated for video. Of course, they're all Zeiss optics. There is a 2 megapixel macro lens and a 2 megapixel depth sensor for portrait images. Other than that, you also have this front facing camera, which is 24 megapixels. As I said, 6.81 inch full HD plus display. Unfortunately, it does have a bezel at the bottom, but it doesn't bother me too much, but it is there. I would have expected them to minimize it a bit, but unfortunately this is the case. This is the way it is. When it comes to the processor, as you guys know, this phone comes with the Snapdragon 765G processor, which is quite capable processor for this upper mid-range sort of device. Other cool things is that the fingerprint has actually been integrated into the power button, so it's quite indented inwards with the body of the display, and it works fairly quickly, which is quite good. So it opens quite quickly. There is also the very annoying, and you've just seen me press it by mistake, Google button, Google Assistant button on the other side, which you can see over here. So I'm definitely going to disable that. I wish they would have allowed us to remap it, but unfortunately that is not the case. There is a bottom firing speaker, only one, USB-C, and thank God there is a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. So that's a very nice addition for this sort of device, and I'm glad they managed to keep it here. So my first impressions when it comes to the performance is that this phone is actually fairly quick when it comes to opening things around, and it feels quite smooth as well. So even though I'm downloading things in the background at the moment, it's done, but it's very fast. It's quite smooth. But there is this gap between the icons, which I would have hoped they'd minimize on this sort of device since the display is so large, but unfortunately it's there. It's bigger than what you can find on the 9 PureView, for example, which has a higher resolution display. As you guys know, this phone is running on Android 10, and it's expected to receive Android 11 quite soon, and I'm hoping we receive that as soon as possible. There's also a new update that's come out on this device. I still don't have it installed on mine, but it allows you to have 5G and 4G for both your SIM cards. Which brings me to the next point. So there is a micro SD slot on the side here and dual SIMs, but the dual SIM is a hybrid. So you either go with one SIM and then SD slot, or 2 SIM cards, which is a bit of a bummer, but this is the way it is. The hardware button here for the volume rocker is actually very satisfying. It's quite clicky, very solid, and overall I'm really impressed with how this phone feels in the hand. It feels like a very high quality device. So when it comes to weight, this phone weighs 220 grams, which is quite hefty, and the phone is quite large, but this all makes the phone feel very expensive when you hold it in the hand. I really like the hardware design. The edges here, I believe, are made out of this new plastic material, not aluminum, but I have no complaints about that because the phone feels quite dense and it feels very, very solid. This is not the type of phone that you're ever worried about having to bend or it bending in your pocket, which is quite good. The variant I'm using here is the 128 gigabytes, 8 gigs of RAM variant. So I managed to get it for roughly around $600 US. I understand that a lot of you think this is overpriced, and I absolutely don't blame you, but this is the way it is. I'm gonna try and focus on the experience when talking about this device rather than just trying to focus on the price. When it comes to battery, this phone has a 4,500 milliampere capacity battery, which should, based on my previous experiences with Nokia devices, last you about 1.5 days of usage. Maybe 2, but I highly doubt that with this sort of device and this sort of performance that I expect from this device. Let's quickly test out the speaker of this thing. So I'm just gonna go to my channel and select one of my videos to see if the speaker is quite good. Device, which is great. The GPU, which is the Adreno 610, is also a very capable GPU, which allows you to play intensive games on this phone. So I would say I've had no complaints using the Nokia 8.3. Wow, it's quite loud and very clear, and I like that. I'm gonna have to do more testing though to see how it fares with music and different sort of tones, but overall, I'm impressed so far. So let's quickly talk about the camera of this device. So as I said, the main shooter is a 64 megapixel unit with Zeiss optics, and it is a PureView branded phone. So let's take a quick snap to have an idea about the quality. It looks quite good here in studio conditions, and I can't wait to properly test it out. There's also a wide angle camera, which as you can see makes quite a bit of difference when it comes to field of view, and I really like how this wide angle camera actually looks quite decent here in the studio. And then of course you have the macro mode, which is 2 megapixels, and you know, I don't have very high expectations on what this thing can do, but it is still there. Yeah, it looks okay, but the resolution is quite poor. Let's have a look at some of the settings for the video. And when it comes to resolution, as you can see, it does 4K at 30 frames per second or 1080p at 60 frames per second. Fortunately, I would have expected it to do 4K at 60 frames, but unfortunately, clearly doesn't. For the front camera, it maxes out at 2K 60 frames per second. So there's obviously a dedicated night mode on this thing, which I'm going to be testing out extensively. Portrait mode, which makes use of bokeh effects with Zeiss effects as well for the bokeh itself. There is cinema mode, which captures videos in this 21:9 aspect ratio at 24 frames per second, which is how movies are usually shot. And you can even capture things in the edgelog format, which is sort of like the raw of videography and, you know, video footage, so you can then perfectly color grade it and edit it the way you want. So that's quite cool to have. I like that a lot. There is also the cinema editor with Zeiss effects, so you can add lens flare and live out your dream of being, you know, a professional movie editor. And then Video Pro mode as well, which gives you a lot of manual controls over the video. This is something I can't wait to make the most out of. So as you guys know, this phone is a part of the Android One program, so you can expect 2 years of updates and 3 years of security updates, which is nice. Now let's just quickly go over some of the settings here to see what HMD Global Nokia Mobile added. So one of the things I noticed is that there is a white balance control, which is really nice. So you can control if you want a warm color or a cold color for the display. I'll just keep it here in the exact middle for the time being. And you can also enable or disable using the fingerprint scanner if you want to move down the notification shade. Let's try it out. So it's on right now. Let's see if it actually works. Yeah, it does work, but it's not very reliable, I would say. So I think I'm just gonna switch it off. So yeah, these are my first impressions of this device. I can immediately tell you the device feels very solid in the hand. The build quality seems quite good, which is something you come to expect out of any Nokia device. The display is quite good. It's nice looking, although it doesn't have any high refresh rate options, unfortunately. And overall, the specs are quite decent, but it doesn't have any of the extraordinary things that you would expect from a device that costs as much as this device does. So for example, there is no IP rating for water resistance. There is no wireless charging on this thing at all, even though the back, I believe, is glass. And the display doesn't have a high refresh rate. But other than that, the rest of the specs are what you would expect from this sort of device. I'm just gonna have to test out the camera extensively and look at the video features, which this phone seems to be very focused on, to determine whether it's a good purchase or not, and whether this is suitable for a more wider audience, or if it's more dedicated towards fans who want a higher end device from the Nokia brand. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you want me to focus on for the full review of this device. So let me know if you're looking for any specific things that you want me to include, and I'll try my best to cover everything you want. Thank you all very much for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.